Imagine a desert so large it could swallow the entire United States. A place where the sand stretches farther than the distance from New York to Los Angeles, and then keeps going. Where temperatures climb high enough to kill a person in hours. Where it can go years without a single drop of rain. Where some dunes rise higher than the Eiffel Tower. This is not the surface of another planet. This is Earth. The largest hot desert in the world. 3.5 million square miles of sand, stone, and silence. Bigger than Australia, almost as large as China. And almost nothing should be able to survive here. This is the Sahara. But the Sahara has a secret. It hasn't always looked like this. Travel back just 6,000 years, a blink in the life of our planet, and you would not recognize this place. Where there is sand today, there were lakes. Where there is silence, there was the sound of running water. Grasslands rolled across the horizon, hippos swam in rivers, giraffes and elephants moved through green valleys. And humans lived here, fishing, herding cattle, painting their lives onto the walls of caves. We know this because they left the evidence behind. Deep in the desert, on rock faces that now stand in total wasteland, there are paintings, people swimming, cattle grazing, animals that could never survive here today. This was the Green Sahara. And it was not a brief accident. For thousands of years, this was one of the most alive places on the continent. So what happened? The Earth shifted. Slowly, the planet's tilt changed the path of the seasonal rains. The monsoons that once watered this land moved south. The lakes began to shrink. The rivers stopped flowing. The grass died, and the sand moved in. It took only a few thousand years for a green world to become the largest desert on Earth. The Sahara we see today is not ancient and unchanging. It is a snapshot, one frame in a story that is still being written. To understand the Sahara, you have to look up. Most of this desert sits beneath a band of sky where the air is always sinking. As air descends, it warms and dries out, and it almost never forms clouds. No clouds means no rain. But it also means something else. Nothing stands between the ground and the sun. For most of the year, the sun here is merciless. It hammers the same sand, the same rock, hour after hour, with nothing to block it and nothing to soften it. The ground can reach temperatures hot enough to cook an egg in minutes. In the summer, the air itself can climb past 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Some of the highest temperatures ever recorded on the planet were measured in places like this. And then the sun goes down. With no clouds to trap the heat, the warmth escapes straight back into the sky. In some parts of the Sahara, the temperature can drop by more than 50 degrees in a single night. A place that tried to kill you with heat at noon can leave you freezing before dawn. This is a land of extremes pushed to their absolute limit. But the sun is only half the story. The other half is the wind. Wind shapes everything here. It lifts the sand, carries it for miles, and drops it again, building dunes that can stand taller than a 50-story building and move slowly across the desert like waves on a frozen ocean. The Sahara is not a still photograph. It is alive with motion. It is constantly rebuilding itself, one grain at a time. After everything you've just seen, the heat, the drought, the endless moving sand, one question remains. How does anything survive here? And yet, life does. Not in spite of the desert, but because it learned to play by its rules. Start with the plants. In a place that can go years without rain, some seeds simply wait. They lie dormant in the sand for 1 year, 5 years, sometimes longer, doing nothing at all. Then, on the rare day that rain finally comes, the desert performs a kind of magic. Within hours, life erupts. Flowers bloom. Green spreads across the sand. And just as quickly, before the water disappears, those plants race to make new seeds, and the waiting begins again. Other plants take a different path. They send roots deep underground, far deeper than the plant is tall, searching for water hidden beneath the surface. Because that is the Sahara's best-kept secret. Beneath all this sand, in some places, there is water. Ancient rainwater, trapped underground for thousands of years, sometimes rises close enough to the surface to create something extraordinary. An oasis. A sudden burst of green and blue in an ocean of sand. Palm trees, pools, shade, and life. For any creature crossing the desert, an oasis is everything. It is the difference between living and not. And the animals? They survive by disappearing. Most desert creatures never face the midday sun at all. They hide. Burrowed beneath the sand, tucked into the shade of a rock, waiting out the heat. They come alive at night, when the desert finally cools, moving across the cold sand in a world most humans never see. You may never spot them, but look closely and the desert leaves clues. A single line of tracks across an untouched dune. Proof that even here, in the largest desert on Earth, something is alive. Of everything that survives in the Sahara, none is more remarkable than this. Us. For thousands of years, human beings have not just crossed this desert, they have lived in it, traded across it, and built entire worlds within it. Long before highways and engines, the Sahara was crossed by caravans. Lines of camels, sometimes hundreds of them, moving in slow procession across an ocean of sand. The camel changed everything. able to go days without water, to walk on sand, to endure the heat. It became the one animal that could turn an impassable desert into a highway. And what moved along that highway was worth more than gold: salt. In a world without refrigeration, salt preserved food, and the Sahara held vast deposits of it. Caravans carried slabs of salt across the desert to trade for gold, ivory, and goods from the south. Entire empires grew rich from this trade. Cities rose from the sand to serve it. One of them, Timbuktu, became legendary, a center of trade and learning, home to libraries and scholars, in the middle of one of the harshest environments on Earth. To survive out here, the people of the desert learned its every mood. The nomads who still cross the Sahara today read the land the way others read a map. They know where the wind hides water, how to navigate by the stars, how to find shelter where there appears to be none. Their homes are built for the extremes: thick walls that stay cool under the brutal sun, narrow streets that trap shade, settlements clustered around the precious water that makes life possible. This is the deepest truth of the Sahara. It is not empty. It never was. It is a place where humans did not just endure the impossible. They made it home. Remember the secret of the Sahara. It is not fixed. It moves. It changes. And right now, in our lifetime, it is changing again. Along its southern edge, the desert has been growing. Slowly, year after year, the sand pushes outward into the lands that border it, swallowing farmland, drying up wells, forcing people to leave villages their families had lived in for generations. This process has a name: desertification. And across the planet, it threatens the lives of hundreds of millions of people who live on the margins of the world's drylands. For a long time, it seemed unstoppable. How do you fight something the size of a continent? But humans had an idea, one of the most ambitious ideas in history. If the desert is moving south, build a wall to stop it. Not a wall of stone or steel, a wall of trees. It's called the Great Green Wall, a plan to plant a living barrier of trees and vegetation stretching thousands of miles across the entire width of Africa, along the southern edge of the Sahara. A green line drawn against the sand. If it succeeds, it could restore land, bring back water, and give life to one of the harshest frontiers on Earth. It is one of the most extraordinary things our species has ever attempted: to hold back a desert with something alive. And here is the part almost no one expects. The Sahara may not need us to bring back the green at all. Scientists who study the planet's slow cycles believe that the same shift that once turned the Green Sahara into desert will one day reverse. Thousands of years from now, the rains may return, the lakes may refill, and the largest hot desert on Earth may once again turn green. The desert we think of as permanent is only passing through. We tend to think of the Sahara as a place, a vast, empty, unchanging thing on a map. But it isn't a thing. It's a moment, a single frame in a story that has been running for millions of years and will keep running long after we're gone. The sand we walk on was once the bed of a lake. The silence we hear was once filled with the sound of water and life, and the emptiness we see is only empty for now. There is something humbling in that. We build our lives around the idea that the world is fixed, that mountains are permanent, that deserts are forever, that the map we are born with is the map our children will inherit. The Sahara quietly tells us otherwise. It reminds us that everything, every landscape, every coastline, every place we think we know, is moving, slowly, patiently, on a timescale so vast that a human life is little more than a single grain of sand blowing across a dune. And maybe that is the strange gift of a place like this. Standing in the largest desert on Earth, surrounded by nothing in every direction, it becomes impossible to feel like the center of anything. The desert does not care about us. It was here long before us. It will be here long after. And yet, people have found a way to live here, to cross it, to raise families in it, to paint on its rocks and build cities in its sand and plant trees against its edge. That is the real story of the Sahara. Not the heat, not the size, not the silence, but the fact that even in the most extreme place on Earth, life finds a way to hold on. The Sahara is just one of them. All over this planet, there are places that push the limits of what we think is possible. Deserts that were once oceans, mountains that touch the edge of the atmosphere, forests darker than night, lakes that can kill, islands no one is allowed to set foot on, places that don't make sense, places that shouldn't exist. We're going to explore all of them, one by one, place by place. If you want to come along on that journey, subscribe. There's a new film coming, and you won't want to miss where we go next. And before you go, we want to hear from you. If you could stand in any extreme place on Earth, any desert, any mountain, any frozen or forgotten corner of the world, where would you go? And what would you want to see? Tell us in the comments. We read every single one. Until next time, thank you for watching.